You watched part 1. You saw an old man sitting alone on a bench. Every single day for 6 years. You thought you understood why. You were only half right, because what Harold Bates had never told anyone, not his son, not his neighbor, not a single soul, was not just that he had lost his granddaughter Emma. It was how he had lost her, and it was the promise he had made, standing over her in a hospital bed. That had kept him on that bench. Every morning, through 6 years of winters and summers, and every season in between. This is part 2. And before it is over, a father will learn the truth about an old man. An old man will say out loud what he has never said to anyone. And a little girl in a yellow jacket will do something so small and so completely unexpected that it will break every heart watching, including yours. 3 weeks had passed since the morning Lily had appeared at Harold's bench. 3 weeks of May mornings that had settled into something Harold did not have a word for yet. Not routine exactly, because routine implied something mechanical, something without feeling, and this was not that. It was more like the return of something he had not realized was missing until it came back. Every morning at 7, Harold arrived at the bench. Every morning, Lily was already there. She came with James, her father, who dropped her at the bench on his way to his running loop, who checked on them every few minutes with the careful eyes of a man who was still deciding what he thought about all of this, but had decided that Lily's happiness mattered more than his uncertainty. Harold had noticed James slowing down as the days passed, the running loop getting slightly longer on the side nearest the bench, the checking becoming less frequent, which paradoxically meant more trust. By the end of the second week, James had stopped checking at all during his run and had instead come to the bench at the end of it, cooling down, hands on his knees, and said good morning to Harold with the tone of a man who had made a decision. Harold had said good morning back with the tone of a man who understood what decision had been made and was grateful for it without making anything of it. Lily noticed everything. She was, Harold had come to understand, the kind of child who missed nothing. She had her father's dark eyes and her father's particular quality of attention, but where James used his attention to assess and control, Lily used hers simply to see. She looked at things the way children look at things before they learn to perform, looking directly and completely and without agenda. She had asked Harold on the 4th morning whether he had any grandchildren. Harold had been quiet for a moment. He had one, he said. She passed away some years ago. Lily had looked at him with those direct dark eyes and said, "What was her name?" "Emma," Harold said. Her name was Emma. Lily had nodded slowly, with the gravity of a child who understands that some names need to be received carefully. She did not ask anything else that morning. But the next morning she had arrived at the bench with something in her hand. A drawing on a piece of white paper folded in half. She held it out to Harold without explanation. He unfolded it. It was a drawing of a park bench, 2 figures on it, one large and one small. Underneath, in careful child's handwriting that was still working out the relationship between letters and space, Harold and Lily, best bench friends. Harold had looked at the drawing for a long moment. Then he had folded it carefully and put it in the inside pocket of his dark coat, next to his chest. He wore it there every morning after that. James Whitfield was 38 years old, and he had spent the past 2 years being excellent at everything except the thing that mattered most. He was an emergency medicine physician at Riverside General Hospital. He was good at his job in the way that people are good at things when they have poured everything they have into a single place. He made decisions under pressure that other people could not make. He stayed calm when calm was the only useful thing to be. His colleagues respected him. His patients trusted him. He came home to a quiet house. Sophie, Lily's mother, had died of an aggressive cancer 26 months ago, 4 months after diagnosis. She had been 35 years old. She had been, James had understood only after she was gone, the person who had known how to fill a house with something that went beyond the practical management of a life. He had always known he loved her. He had not fully understood until she was absent what she had been doing in every room, every evening, every ordinary moment he had taken for granted. He was raising Lily alone. He was, by most measures, doing it well. Lily was fed and clothed and enrolled in a good school and attended her appointments and had friends and laughed often. He was present. He showed up. He did the things that needed doing. What he could not do, what he had not been able to do in 26 months, was be fully there in the way Sophie had been fully there. There was always a part of him that was somewhere else. At the hospital, in his head, in the particular room in his mind, where he kept the things he had not processed and was not sure how to process. He had not been watching Lily closely enough that Thursday morning in May. He had been on the phone. The call had been from the hospital, a scheduling issue. He had turned away for what felt like 30 seconds and looked back to find the space where Lily had been empty. He did not talk about what those 20 minutes of searching had felt like. He was a man who had learned to convert fear into action, and he had done that, moved through the park methodically, phone in hand, and found her safe on a bench with an old man who had done exactly the right thing. He had been grateful. He had also been, underneath the gratitude, deeply shaken. Not by what had happened, which had been harmless, but by what it meant about the distance inside him. The part of him that had been on a phone call when his daughter had walked toward ducks. He had said nothing about this to anyone. He had gone home that night and sat at the kitchen table for a long time after Lily was asleep. And then he had gone upstairs and stood in the doorway of her room and watched her sleep for several minutes, which he had not done since she was an infant. The next morning, he had taken her back to the park. He had not entirely admitted to himself why. The morning that changed everything began like the others. Harold arrived at the bench at 7. Lily was already there. James was doing his running loop, visible in the distance.
Emma.
The park was doing its May morning thing, green and warm and full of birds. Lily was quieter than usual. Harold noticed but did not push. He had learned in 3 weeks the particular rhythm of her. She had high-energy mornings and quieter ones, and the quieter ones were not worse, just different. Sometimes they were better, in the way that quiet conversations are sometimes more real than busy ones. They sat for 20 minutes in companionable silence, Harold with his crossword, Lily with a small sketchbook she had started bringing, drawing things she saw in the park. Then she said, without looking up from her sketchbook, "Dad cries sometimes at night." Harold put down his pen. "He thinks I can't hear," Lily said, "but the walls are thin." She was drawing something carefully, a bird on a branch. "He tries to be quiet about it. Dad is very quiet about everything." Harold looked at her profile, the concentration on her face, the way she kept drawing while she talked, as if the drawing made it easier to say. "He misses my mom," she said. "Of course he does," Harold said. "Do you miss your wife?" "Every day." Lily looked up at him then. "Does it get less?" Harold thought about how to answer this honestly, without answering it in a way that a child should not have to carry. He thought about what was true and what was useful and whether those two things were the same thing in this case. "It gets different," he said finally. "The missing doesn't get smaller, but you get bigger, and so it takes up less of the whole space." Lily considered this with the seriousness she gave to things that deserved it. "I'll tell Dad that," she said. "You don't have to." "I know," she said. "I want to." She went back to her drawing. Harold picked up his pen. The park morning continued around them. Then Lily said, "Harold, can I ask you something about Emma?" Harold went still. He had said Emma's name once, 4 mornings ago. He had not said it since, and neither had Lily, and he had assumed she had stored it away the way children store things, carefully and for later. Later was apparently now. "You can ask," he said. "What happened to her?" Harold set down his pen. He set down the crossword. He put both hands flat on his knees, the gesture he made when he needed to be grounded in something solid. He had not told this story to anyone. Not Thomas, who knew only that Emma had died and that Harold had taken it hard. Not the grief counselor Thomas had arranged 2 years after, whom Harold had seen 4 times before stopping. Not anyone. He sat on the bench in the May morning and looked at the park path in front of him and understood, with the clarity of something long arriving, that he was going to tell it now. To this child with her sketchbook and her direct dark eyes and her drawing of 2 figures on a bench with the words "best bench friends" underneath. "Emma was my granddaughter," he said. "My son Thomas's daughter. She was 7 years old." He paused. "She was," he stopped, started again. "She was the kind of child who made every room better, loud sometimes in a good way. She laughed the way some children laugh with her whole body." She liked animals and maps and asking questions that I couldn't always answer. He paused. She reminded me of someone I know. Lily looked at him. She understood. She did not say anything. Her parents, Thomas and his wife, they divorced when Emma was 4. It was difficult. Thomas moved to Denver. Emma stayed in Ohio with her mother. Harold looked at his hands. I was here, I was close, so I saw her every week. Saturdays mostly. We came to this park. He touched the bench. We sat here, this bench. She liked the ducks and the pigeons, and she liked the crossword even though she was 7 and could only do the easy ones. She liked the thermos because she said it made the coffee look important. Lily almost smiled, did not because she could feel this was not a smiling part. 6 years ago, Harold said, a Saturday we were here. Emma wanted to go look at the ducks. I said yes. He stopped. I was doing the crossword. I thought I could see her from here. It was a busy morning, more people than usual. The park was very quiet around them, or perhaps it wasn't and Harold simply couldn't hear it anymore. She went toward the duck pond. I was watching, and then a dog came running. A big dog, not dangerous, just running, and Emma stepped back from it and she stepped off the path, and there was the ground drops off there near the east pond. She fell. Harold stopped. She hit her head, he said, on the stones at the edge of the pond. Lily had put down her sketchbook. She was looking at Harold completely. I was there in seconds, Harold said. I was running before she finished falling. But seconds, he stopped again. She was unconscious. I called the ambulance. They came quickly. They took her to the hospital and they did everything that could be done. He pressed both hands flat on the bench. She didn't wake up, he said. She was in a coma for 9 days, and then she was gone. The park around them continued its morning. Somewhere near the fountain, a child was laughing. A dog barked once and went quiet. The ordinary world entirely indifferent. I was watching, Harold said, and it still happened. Lily reached over and placed her small hand over Harold's large one on the bench. She didn't say anything. She just put her hand there and left it there. Harold looked down at it, small fingers on his worn knuckles. The drawing she had given him pressed against his chest in his coat pocket. He did not cry. He had finished crying a long time ago. But something moved through him that had not moved in 6 years. Something that had been locked in the specific way grief locks things when you refuse to let anyone near them. The promise, Lily said quietly. Is that why you come here every day? Harold looked at her. I promised her, he said. In the hospital. I sat next to her bed and I held her hand and I told her I would come back to the bench. That I would be here, that I would make sure, he stopped. That I would make sure no other child. He could not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Lily understood. James had finished his running loop. He was approaching the bench from the north path, cooling down, when he saw Lily's posture. She was turned toward Harold, her small hand on the old man's hand, her face serious and present in a way he recognized as her fully attending face, the one she wore when something mattered. He slowed without meaning to. He was close enough to hear, had been close enough to hear for longer than he had realized. He had caught the last minutes of it. Emma's name, the duck pond, the 9 days. James stood on the path and did not move. He was a doctor. He had sat with more families in grief than he could count. He knew what it looked like. He knew the particular shape of a person carrying something they had never put down. He had not seen it on Harold because he had not been looking. He looked now. He saw a 74-year-old man who had been sitting on this bench every morning for 6 years because a little girl had died on a Saturday morning while he was doing the crossword, and he had spent every day since making sure he was here, present, watching, keeping a promise to someone who could no longer hear him keep it. James pressed the back of his hand against his mouth for a moment. He thought about Lily, about how she had sat down beside this man without hesitation that first morning, the instinct of a child toward something safe. How she had come back the next day and every day after. How she had given him a drawing. How she had known, with the particular knowing of a child who had lost her own mother, that this person needed to not be alone on this bench. James stood on the path in the May morning and understood something about his daughter that made him proud in a way that had nothing to do with achievement. He walked to the bench. Harold looked up. He had composed himself, the way he composed himself, completely and without drama. But his eyes were different. Something had been opened and was still open. James sat down on the other side of Harold. The bench held 3 of them now. The old man in the middle, the little girl on one side, the father on the other. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then James said quietly, "I'm sorry about Emma." Harold looked at him. "Lily didn't tell me," James said. "I was nearby." "I heard." Harold nodded slowly. "I'm sorry I didn't." James started again. "I made a judgment about you. The first morning, I'm a doctor. I'm trained to assess situations quickly. I assessed you and I was..." He paused. "I was not seeing you. You were seeing a stranger with your daughter," Harold said. "That was reasonable." "It was incomplete," James said. They sat together, the 3 of them, while the park moved around them. Then Lily, who had been quiet through this, said, "Harold, look." She was pointing at the bench. At the back of it, the wooden top rail, where the paint had faded and the wood showed through in patches. Harold looked. Someone had carved initials into the back of the bench. Old carving, deep in the wood, done years ago. HB plus EB. Harold stared at it. He had never noticed it before. He had sat on this bench for 6 years and never looked at the back rail. HB Harold Bates. EB Emma Bates. His hand came up slowly and touched the carving. The letters were smooth from years of weather. Someone had done this deliberately, carefully, with a knife or a key, pressing deep enough to last. Harold looked at the carving for a long time. "Did you do this?" Lily asked. "No," Harold said. "Then who?" Harold shook his head. He did not know. He could not know. But he sat with his fingers in the carved letters of his name and his granddaughter's name on the bench where she had died, and where he had come every day for 6 years. And he felt something he had not felt since before the hospital corridor and the fluorescent lights and the worst 9 days of his life. He felt like he was not alone in it. James watched Harold's face. He watched the thing that moved through it. He had seen that thing before, in hospital rooms, at the moment when a patient who had been holding something entirely alone finally let someone else hold part of it. He reached into his jacket pocket and found what he always carried there. A small, smooth river stone Lily had given him the previous Christmas, because she said it was a worry stone, and he seemed like he could use one. He placed it on the bench beside Harold's hand without saying anything. Harold looked at it, then at James. "She gave me one too," James said quietly. "Said the worry goes into the stone and the stone is strong enough to hold it." Harold looked at the stone for a long moment. Then he picked it up. He turned it over in his large, worn hand, the stone smooth and cool against his weathered palm. "Smart girl," he said. "She is," James said. Lily, between them, said nothing. She picked up her sketchbook and began drawing again, the 3 of them on the bench, and underneath in her careful handwriting she wrote, "Harold and Lily and Dad, the bench that holds everything." She tore it out carefully and gave it to Harold. He folded it and put it next to the first one in his inside pocket, both of them against his chest, both of them against his heart. That evening James called Thomas in Denver. He had Thomas's number because he had found it in Harold's phone one morning, when Harold had accidentally left it on the bench and James had picked it up to return it and seen the contact. He was not sure what he was going to say. He said, "My name is James Whitfield. I'm a doctor in Ohio. I've been sitting on a bench with your father every morning for 3 weeks, and I think you should know he's one of the finest people I've ever met, and I think he could use a visit." There was a silence on the other end. Then Thomas said, "Is he all right?" "He's been alone a long time," James said. Another silence. "I'll come next month," Thomas said. James hung up. He went upstairs and stood in the doorway of Lily's room and watched her sleeping and thought about Harold on his bench in the morning, and Emma carved in the wood and a worry stone in a worn old hand. He thought about Sophie and about the part of himself that had been somewhere else for 26 months. He thought about thin walls and a child who heard things and carried them quietly and gave them back as drawings. He went back downstairs and sat at the kitchen table, and for the first time in 26 months, he did not sit in the specific way he always sat, slightly away from the table, slightly ready to stand, slightly elsewhere. He sat all the way in. He put both hands on the table. He stayed.
Happens every morning when the sun comes up.